Lazy, arrogant, doesn't care. Generational, humanitarian, technically gifted. There's two sides to Mesut Özil, and he is a player that splits opinion, in my opinion, more than any other. So in this video, we're going to take a look at his legacy and what sort of impact he's going to leave on world football. So this week, we've kind of been hit by the news that Mesut Özil might finally be leaving Arsenal after just over 7 years at the club. He joined in 2013 on deadline day in the summer from Real Madrid for 42.5 million euros, or maybe pounds, one of the two. But yeah, it was Arsenal's club record signing at the time. It was a massive coup in the transfer market, a huge signing, one of the biggest of that time period. And while it worked out for the first few years, the last couple of years have not been great for Mesut Ozil and Arsenal. He's kind of been frozen out of the team. He hasn't played in, I believe, 10 months or so. It's been a really tough situation, especially for fans such as myself who have loved him growing up, and I think most Arsenal fans considered him one of their favorite players growing up, at least for the ones around my age. But I personally don't think there's been many players more talented than Ozil to step foot at Arsenal Football Club in the club's history, and it's really a shame how things have resulted. But the whole argument behind, or not argument, but sort of story behind him leaving, he's been linked with Fenerbahce and lately DC United in MLS, and personally I would love if he moved to MLS because I'm from Canada, and Canada has some MLS teams. Perhaps go see him play live would be fantastic before he retires. But we'll discuss his legacy and what sort of impact he's going to leave on the game. Now, as I mentioned, he splits opinion greatly. I mean, I'm sure you know people who absolutely love him, who will defend him with their honor, with their life, and then you already know people who also dislike him, call him lazy, call him arrogant. And to be honest, I think you can see both sides, no matter what stand you have, because first of all, we'll discuss, he splits opinion, like I mentioned, and it's kind of difficult, even for myself, as I grew up, kind of watching him and really loving him and what he brings to the table. Even I sit here and I think of those negatives that people bring up, and I think I think a lot of those are actually true, and maybe not true in like a for sure 100% way, but you can see where they're coming from. And I actually don't blame people that call him lazy and stuff, and I'll explain why. But to begin, I guess we can talk about the positives. I mean, as I mentioned in the intro, he is a humanitarian. He's done so much to help people around the world. He paid for many surgeries for kids in Brazil. He's always, interacting with fans and doing things to help people in need. And I think that's what being in football is all about. When you're off the field, you have to use your power and influence to spark change. And he's somebody who's spoken out against the horrible treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China. And I know Arsenal kind of didn't really back him on that, which I'm not a fan of, but that's just the sort of person he is off the field. And when it comes to his talent on the field, he is technically gifted. He's just a phenomenal player, and I don't know if anybody can really refute that. But the problem is that people who have only kind of seen him the last few years, people maybe from a younger generation, they're not going to really consider him a great. Whereas for us who have been watching for a longer time and have been around the game for a longer time, we know what he was capable of. We know the type of player he was. And he, I believe Raphael Honigstein, the German journalist, called him the most technically gifted player of our generation. And to be honest, I look around and I don't see much that you could argue other than Lionel Messi. I don't see anybody who you could say, and maybe Neymar, that you could say for sure 100% they are more technically gifted than Mesut Özil. Even Neymar is arguable, but other than that, I don't see anybody. And that's sort of telling, because the things he can do with the ball are just so incredible, and according to reports that he's still doing well in training, it seems that he still has these talents, and if he's able to bring them to MLS, I think that would be a great coup for the league. And of course, he's labeled the assist king, which is very hard to doubt. He's bagged assists almost everywhere he's gone, except for the last couple of years at Arsenal, but his Real Madrid career, first years at Arsenal, Werder Bremen, even when he was young, and for the German national team, the assist numbers are just through the roof. I mean, so impressive. And I believe in this last generation only Messi has had more assists. I'll have to double check that, but yeah, I mean, that's just the type of player he is. He is so good in the final third, and he just has that killer ball, something that's so hard to find these days. And that's just, just what he's best at, and that's why he's been labeled the assist king. Now, there are negatives, as I mentioned, and when you watch Mesut Özil, you kind of get the feeling that, just his body language is a bit off. And I think that's just the style of player he is. I mean, he's just very languid, a little bit on the weaker side. He doesn't have much physicality to him. And he kind of comes across as not really putting in his best effort just due to that. And to be honest, like, I kind of see where people are coming from when they call him lazy or sort of, not caring, because he does come across that way sometimes. And even in this period where he's not been playing for Arsenal, he doesn't seem like he really, cares that much. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's really pushing for a move away. He didn't push for a move away last summer, the summer before, when it was kind of obvious that he's not really first choice. It seems as if he's happy to just collect his paycheck. I believe he still is the highest paid player in the Premier League. And it just seems like he's happy to just keep collecting money like that. And that's not something that I like, and I'm sure many people like. So I can see why people are upset with that. Of course, we saw Socrates play for Arsenal under 23s. Ozil didn't want any part of that. He just, in the last 5-6 months, he's just stayed home, played Fortnite, and I believe he got married, had a child as well. Of course, he's focusing on his family now. But I can see where people are coming from with that, and there are definitely negatives to this game. I mean, you could see that Arsenal don't really trust him off the ball, and I can totally see where they're coming from. Just the way that modern football is, everybody's got to be able to cover a lot of ground. Ozil does actually cover a lot of ground, but just not in that sort of intense way that you need. He sort of just lounges around, and he's always moving, but he's not really someone to press or really track back and defend. And that's something you need these days, especially in midfield. We talk about him kind of being the last of this, technically gifted, fluid, golden generation of number 10s with players like Kaká and Zidane and all the others from the 2000s, and you kind of think, Ozil is the last of that type of generation. And I think that's true. You don't really see many players like him anymore, and the ones that are like him, don't really find places at top clubs because they're not good enough off the ball. And I think that's kind of been the downfall of Mesut Ozil's career the last few years, just his inability to kind of adapt to the modern game, whereas players like David Silva have been able to do that. I think that's been his biggest downfall, but I do think that he could have actually done really, really well in a league like the Ligue 1 or the Bundesliga if he had just left a couple of years ago and started fresh in a new league. But unfortunately, he just kind of stuck around, happy with his contract, and I can see why people were upset with that. So what sort of legacy is Ozil going to leave? It's a really, really tough question because of the two sides. There's one side that's so phenomenal, unbelievable player, and there's a side that's what does he really bring anymore, and why hasn't he been performing the last few years? For me, I hope Ozil's legacy is a positive one, because I think he deserves it. He's won a World Cup, he's still had a phenomenal career, he has a league title with Real Madrid, tons of FA Cups with Arsenal, he helped end Arsenal's trophy drought, he won a World Cup with Germany, he is a German national team legend despite the way his relationship with them ended. If you weren't familiar, he left after the 2018 World Cup, just shy of 100 caps for the country, citing racism and discrimination from the national team board as the reason why he left. And that was such a shame. But if you look at players who played with him, Ozil is very much considered one of the best players of our generation. I don't know if anybody could really refute that. If you look at Marco Reus, any players who played for Arsenal, they'll all say that he is one of the most, if not the most talented player they've ever played with. And that's kind of telling of how gifted he is and what he brought to the table. And yeah, if you look at the younger generation of players, I mean, can you name anyone that is as gifted as Mesut Özil? I don't think you could, and I don't think anyone's close, actually. And that's again telling that he is one of the most gifted players of this millennia, of this 21st century. And it's really a shame how his career has dwindled down, but hopefully we do get to see him in MLS or even the Super League and he still has a couple years left, I believe. But I hope his legacy is a positive one. What I'm worried about is that people who have solely watched the last 3 years of his Arsenal career will kind of judge everything based off of that and be really, really harsh on him. Whereas if you watched him between 2009 and 2016 or 2017, I mean, that was one of the best players in the world. I don't think anybody can refute that. But just these last few years have been so poor compared to what came before that I'm worried it might completely drag down his legacy. But for me, his legacy should be a positive one. And once he does retire, or once he moves away from Arsenal, I think people should look at him positively because of how he impacted the game and just his level of talent and just everything he's done on and off the field. I think is so wonderful. And to be honest, he's had a wonderful career, and I personally have loved watching him growing up, and I'm sure many of you have too, whether you support Arsenal or not. And it's a shame that we're kind of losing him now, but hopefully we do get to watch him for a couple more years. Anyways, guys, that was another football question box video. This one was actually a premeditated one. I did not pick that question. It's just something I wanted to talk about. But yeah, make sure you subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, and make sure you join in the conversation. Let me know what you think of Mesut Özil, whether you agree with what I said, whether you disagree, and catch you guys later.